Hi, my name is Tamara Jasundara. I'm from Georgetown University Center on Education and the Workforce. Let me welcome you all who are here online already, but I'm just going to give a couple of more minutes for the others to log in and get settled in before we start. So bear with us for whoever is coming. I know it's a Friday afternoon, so we're going to start as quickly as possible, but just allowing just a few more minutes for others to uh, log in and get ready. Maybe 2 or 3 minutes. Hmm. But in the meantime, if you have any questions as to if you cannot see the PowerPoint, you should be able to see the first page, which is kind of our cover for the report. Or if you cannot see that, or if you cannot hear me, just let us know. We will try to see what we can do on our side to fix those problems. Okay, just one more minute and then we will start. Okay, so let's start. I think this is good enough time. And let me again welcome you to our webinar on the online college labor market, where the jobs are. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. I know it's a Friday afternoon, so it is very encouraging to see that all of you are here to listen to our webinar. And my name is again, for those of you who joined in just now, my name is Tamara Jasundara. I'm from the Georgetown University Center on Education and the Workforce. I'm one of the co-authors of the report that we are going to be discussing today. It was just released on Wednesday, April 23rd. And with me here today to present the findings of the report is Tony Carnevale. He's the director of the center, and he's also one of the authors of the report. And just before we start, I want to discuss a little bit about the questions and answers. If you have any questions, please, I'm going to ask you to hold it until we end the presentation. And depending on the time, we will try to address as many questions as possible. And without holding you on any longer, let me open the floor to Tony Carnevale, the director of the center and one of the report authors. Tony, let me, Tony?
Director of the Georgetown. Hello, I'm Tony Carnevale. I'm the director of the Georgetown University Center on Education and the Workforce. I want to begin by thanking our partner in this work, Burning Glass Technologies. They have done something, at least in our experience, that is unprecedented, and that is, as a private institution, they've opened up their data, their so-called real-time data, and allowed us to play around under the hood of their data mechanisms. In particular, I want to thank Matt Siegelman, who's the CEO at Burning Glass, and Justina Sala, who is the Director of Analytics and Strategic Research at Burning Glass. Without their cooperation and their collegial participation in the work, more than just cooperation, they this would not be at all possible. We're here to talk essentially about job openings in broad form. Job openings meaning an open spot in the economy that's available for someone. Job openings meaning an employer request to hire somebody. The way job openings are created in the economy are essentially twofold. One is there are new jobs, brand new jobs that weren't there before. And then the secondary feedstock for job openings is when people leave the labor market. In these times, a growing share of that is the retirement of the baby boom, but also when people change jobs, change occupations, that is, and change their work status, that is, leave the labor force and open up jobs for other people. And increasingly in this economy, we get a lot more job openings from retirements than anything else, more than new jobs. I want to give you some sense of where we are on job openings because it is a pretty direct ground level indication of where we are in the economy. To give you some perspective, job openings fell from about 4.7 million job openings prior to the recession, prior to 2007, 4.7 million job openings in any given month, and fell down as low as 2.3 million job openings in any given month during the recession and at the trough of the recession. Since the recovery, job openings have moved up to about 4.2 million. Because our data is now a few months old, we're essentially talking here about 3.7 million, an economy with about 3.7 million job openings, so we're a few 100,000 off, but essentially we're talking about a robust economy in recovery on the upswing. When we finally arrive at full employment, most assume somewhere near 2016 or 2017 would be a fairly conservative but probably pretty durable estimate about when we'll arrive there. With growth in the economy, there should be 5 million job openings on a monthly basis, and that will represent essentially full employment in America, so that on any given day, essentially, people looking for a job are looking at a 5 million set of slots that they can compete for. In particular, we're talking about job openings that are advertised online. For those of you who followed the development of this phenomenon, what has happened in the last decade or so is that more and more jobs are carried online. Less and less do you have to use shoe leather and walk around with your resume and knock on doors, because we've now come to the point we determined using this data that about 70% of all job openings are now advertised online, which means essentially that for Americans, the economy is somewhere inside their computer if they're willing to take the energy and do the work to find the jobs that are available on their machine. These jobs online with Burning Glass and a few others who do this are collected by scraping off the internet, going to every employment service, essentially government employment service, every employer who posts jobs online, every professional society, and every other job board and website that the little spiders they send out can find and brings the jobs back. They then deduplicate, that is, take away the duplicates in those job openings, and finally arrive at what is essentially a full board of jobs. In this study, we're playing with job openings at the end of 2013, so it's about 3.7 million job openings and total at that time, and about 2.7 million of those are posted online. We find that about half of those online job ads are asking for people who have at least a bachelor's degree. So 1.3 million or 1.4 million of the job ads we looked at required bachelor's. The other half required something less than a bachelor's degree. What is most striking, and the reason we're focused so much today on our initial report on jobs that require, or where employers are asking for a bachelor's degree or a graduate degree, is because we've calculated that in the end, the online job openings now essentially cover the college labor market, that is the BA or better labor market, cover more than 80% of all job openings actually in existence at any point in time for bachelor's degrees or better. And so I think one of the things we found that is most striking to me is that the BA and better, the BA plus labor market is an online labor market now, which is good news for American college kids who are just graduating this year. The next graph, we show the BA or better labor market job openings broken down into BAs, master's degrees, and PhDs. In general, as you can see, there's a lot more red than golden or blue. There are a lot more BA jobs than master's degree jobs or graduate jobs, which seems intuitively sound. In general, there are about 1.4 million bachelor's degrees that employers are looking for online in particular occupations, about 370,000 master's degree jobs, and about 90,000 PhDs job openings that are sitting there for someone to win. And as you can see in the distribution in this chart, there's wide variation in the mix. Social science, which is a relatively small job category, but it is evenly divided pretty much between BAs and master's degrees and PhDs. Healthcare is another one with a very rich mix of BA and graduate degree jobs available. Education, as one would expect, is also very rich in master's degrees and graduate degrees, and thereafter, until you hit STEM, the graduate degrees are not as relevant to the job openings online, although these are large numbers and they are very substantial in the MA and PhD level, something we know from our other work that has shown up in this recovery in general is that to some extent the PhD labor market never did go negative. That is, we never lost, we never went below preceding year's job levels, and same for MA. We lost BAs, but we've recovered most of the BA jobs, and we're now in a growth mode for master's degrees and PhDs. The largest numbers of job ads, which we show here in this graphic by occupational grouping, these are pretty aggregate groupings. They essentially add to 100% of the economy. But as you can see, the largest numbers of BA jobs are in managerial and professional office positions. This is something that you'll see throughout the job openings data, but you'll also see it in the all other data on education and job requirements, that essentially the office has become the largest and most powerful employer of people with college degrees. More and more, the office economy, white-collar workers who get to dress down on Friday are more and more what the jobs that college people do. Second in line in terms of the overall number of jobs, at about 500,000, are STEM jobs, which include everything in the sciences from chemistry to physics and in engineering and technology, especially computers, and any math-related kinds of jobs, as well as engineering. Then let me move on to a more detailed look at these bachelor's degree jobs. These are job titles well below the aggregate level that we just showed you. We put this here because we found it striking the extent to which there are certain clusters of particular job openings around computing and IT and software that were very strong, and you see these in the green. The largest single category of job openings month to month we're finding is in software development applications, IT professionals, computer systems analysts. It gives a certain amount of credibility, especially when we look at the duration of the job openings before they're filled. It gives a certain amount of credibility to the complaint from technical employers that they're suffering real skill shortages in spite of the recession. They seem to be looking very hard for people in these occupational areas. Another set of jobs that show up very strong in the detail of the jobs that are being offered is anything that has to do with managerial work. There are a number of these categories we've shown you in the salmon color, 4 of them that are managerial. Notably, the largest one, or at least tied for it, is in medical management. We find that, incidentally, throughout the occupations, that irrespective of the occupation, whether you're a service worker or a technical worker or a management worker, that a lot of people in different occupations are now pursuing their occupation in the healthcare industry. We added in nursing here because it stands out by itself as the largest job category in healthcare, at about 50,000 job openings for nursing. What we found significant about this is that in total there are about 100,000 nursing jobs in the data. 50,000 of them are BA and 50,000 of them aren't. But the fact that half the jobs are now BA or better is really quite significant. And we see in other data work that we do that the shift from the AA, LPN world at the sub-baccalaureate level to baccalaureate nursing is happening very fast and very aggressively. In the next slide, we begin to talk about some of the particular areas that seem to have interesting findings associated with them. One is that when we looked at office jobs, white-collar office work, we found that management and financial operations were dominant. One surprising thing here is the extent to which there has been a recovery in the financial operations job openings after the financial collapse in 2006 and 2007, and that this particular kind of job seems to be increasingly pervasive across all industries. We suppose from that, and this and other work, that much the same way that the computing market collapsed with the dot-com bust years ago, that in spite of the fact that the industry can decline in finance or in computers at that time, that what's happened in the United States is that financial operations, financial occupations have become pervasive and necessary in a much broader array of institutions, whatever their size, in much the same way that every organization, small or big, has a computer person or persons. More and more it's the case that somebody in every organization, however big or small, is somebody who does financial operations for that institution. We did find in the management and professional ranks, as you could see in the previous slide, there's still demand for lawyers. There are about 35,000 job ads out there for lawyers. And that, however, when we looked further into this, we saw that what's happening is while there are still job openings, they look to be principally from retirement and not from the addition of new jobs. And that demand is, that is, job openings don't appear to be keeping up with the supply of law school graduates. Just to give you a number on that, between 2004 and 2011, we produced about 420,000 law school graduates, but over that period, our estimate is that there were only about 132,000 job openings for lawyers. So there's still jobs for lawyers out there, but they're mostly coming from retirement and people leaving jobs that already existed rather than new jobs. We also see in the legal labor market in general, when we look at the job detail in the job openings, that there's a shift going on to paralegals and legal assistants from lawyers. So Job openings for lawyers are growing at about 5%, mostly based on replacement of existing lawyers who are retiring, but job openings for paralegals, legal assistants, and other legal occupations are growing at almost 3 times that rate, at about 15%. So what we read in the paper about law school jobs seems to be quite true. And we also see that there are signs that the legal sector is beginning to adjust because law school applications and median salaries for lawyers are also down, both in job openings data and in the general BLS and CPS data. Next, we have a slide on STEM. The remarkable thing we find about STEM in this data is that it looks to us as if the STEM labor market is almost completely online at the bachelor's degree and above level. In fact, it looks as if they are relatively overrepresented in the online job ads. They make up about 28% of the college jobs in the online job ads. And when we look at other data on the labor force, they represent less than half that, about 11%, in the overall hiring for bachelor's degrees in the larger economy outside the openings data. So it looks as if the STEM labor market is one that we do now have in a box, and you can find it on your computer if you're a STEM worker, scientist, technologist, engineer, mathematician with a bachelor's degree or better. We have over 507,000 job ads for STEM workers. The other thing we found is that the job ads are increasingly computer-based. More than 70% of the STEM job ads are computers or computer-related, much higher shares than other science, engineering, and other kinds of technical jobs. So the computer is still driving employment. Software developers and computer systems analysts, as we showed in a previous slide, are all by themselves the single largest occupation in the job openings data, both because we think they are fully represented in job ads that can be scraped off the internet, and because the demand is still high. One thing that interested us as well is we saw a big comeback in sales jobs for college workers, sales and office jobs. And when we look at the detail, we find that in the sales ranks, which are about 65% of sales and administrative office occupations, that the sales jobs are not quite what we thought. That is, we asked ourselves, why are so many people with BAs working in sales jobs? How many BAs do they need to sell retail at the Gap? But when we looked at underneath the aggregates, we found a pretty decided shift in sales jobs that runs away from the stereotype. That is, more and more sales jobs are about technical sales or sales jobs that require significant expertise in either technical subject matters, securities, insurance, and the like. As you can see in this next slide, if you look at the salmon-colored lines, sales representatives for wholesale and manufacturing, there were 63,000 job openings for BA+. When you look at the wage data here, what you see is that these people are paid, they tend to be majority of bachelor's degrees, 60 or 70% bachelor's degree for wholesale and manufacturing sales, and they tend to have relatively high wages. They are, in many, many cases, people with STEM degrees. That is, these are people who understand machines, to oversimplify a bit, selling to other people who understand machines, and if you don't understand heavy equipment and machines, you're not going to make many sales. So they tend to be relatively well technically trained if they're selling in wholesale and manufacturing or technical and scientific products. And sales engineers are the same thing. These are people who work in heavy equipment. The other set of sales worker that sort of defy the stereotype of the trainee at the Gap are the people in securities and commodities and in insurance, and they make up another 8 to 10% of all of the sales opening jobs. So sales, it looks like over the past several years has become much more complicated. I suspect as the recovery continues, we'll get more and more sales jobs in the retail sector, where the bachelor's degree is not nearly so important. As you can see here, that for retail salesperson, only about 15% of them tend to carry a bachelor's degree. And then we wanted to look at education and training, because that is, after all, the industry we're in, so we're very curious about it. What we see here is a story we've seen elsewhere, and it is interesting over the recession that as we still have about 100,000 job ads for educators in the job openings data. It is mostly, on balance, it is shifted away from K-12 to post-secondary education jobs. It is, in many respects, not a good news numbers for educators. We saw during the recession itself that we were running well over 200,000 job openings for educators during the recession, 2007 to 2010, and we've fallen well below that now, down to 100,000 job ads. So what appears to have happened, and we see this in other data, is that in the recession, education held up reasonably well as a job opportunity. I suspect in part because of the Obama stimulus program that helped the states retain teachers, and made the recession less bad news for women, incidentally, who were concentrated in those jobs. But when the recovery came, the females got hit, and this is where they were hit most in education, as during the recovery, public and not-for-profit budgets began to plummet. We saw sort of a second gender-based recession focused on females in the not-for-profit world, and the data on education reflects that. In the next slide, we want to make a point about healthcare, and that is that the healthcare occupations, job openings, and when one looks at all the other data as well, is a very polarized job market. The larger piece of it, as you can see here, especially for people with BAs or better, but in general, the larger piece of it is for professional and technical workers who tend to have college degrees and the like. And you can see here that for BA jobs, the technical and professional, the green bar is really dominant. If you look to the blue bar, which is healthcare support, which is where a lot of the nurses' aides and other lower skilled workers are, the BA level or better jobs are many fewer. Although there are some, in these support occupations include psychiatric aides, speech and language pathology assistants, and a variety of different kinds of therapists, which is really the BA level labor market in that industry. As we come to a close here, we thought we ought to say something about industry itself. For the most part, when we talk about jobs and education, it really is occupation that matters. That's what connects to education, not industry. There are all sorts of different occupations in any industry, and what really determines the education requirement is not the industry, but which occupation you're in. If you're an accountant in manufacturing, you'll require a college degree. If you're a laborer, you won't. So it's not the industry that drives the relationship to education, but it's the occupation. But even at that, there are certain industries that really are home base for college-educated workers. Among those, as I've discussed before, you can see at about 340,000 jobs, the longest blue line is consulting and business services. This is a particularly interesting industry because it really didn't exist before the late 1990s. It is really, it is the strongest employer both in job openings and in the economy on the whole for college level talent in the United States. And it really is the industry that grew from contracting out. That is, back in the day, if you were a manufacturing company, you had your own lawyers, accountants, architects, HR people, cafeteria workers, and then when American industry began restructuring in the 80s, employers began trying to hold on to their core competency and contracting everything else out. Consulting and business services is the sector that grew as a result of that. And it wasn't until the late 90s and early 2000s that we really understood that, because the Bureau of Labor Statistics then reorganized their data to make that more plain. But this is where a lot of college graduates go. Unlike other industries, it doesn't have a particular product. So if you're talking about healthcare, the product is healthcare. Finance, it's finance. Education, it's education. And consulting and business services, it's anything you can sell to other companies, from their HR people under contract, their computer people under contract, their managers under contract, the cafeteria workers under contract, and so on. But this is the new big industry that employs, more and more employs college workers who then in the end work in a variety of industries, but provide a general service that's occupation related across a variety of industries. And then, not surprisingly, we have healthcare, finance, education, and then move into manufacturing, where technical and managerial jobs tend to dominate the BA or better labor force, and so on. That is, in nutshell, what we think are the highlights of what is an enormous detailed data dump that we've included in the report. We'll be doing, the report comes with a technical appendix, which we think, with Burning Glass's help, we've really taken a hard look at the enormous potential in what we call real-time or job openings data online, and looked at its state of development, its strengths, and some of its weaknesses in terms of coverage as well. And that has been released along with the report, and what will follow in a week or two, as soon as we can get it printed, is a state-by-state analysis that mirrors the national analysis we've just done. Thank you again for showing up, and have a good weekend, and I'll turn it back to Tamara.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you for that wonderful summary of our online college labor market report. And as Tony was saying, we have a state report coming up, but next Wednesday on the 30th of April, we have another webinar. But before I go to that, I want to ask you, I'm sure you might be having questions. You can type it in, and as we see them, we will get to that, but I will allow you a few minutes to type them in. If you're not familiar with the process, you can see a control panel on the right of your screen with a chat question box, and write in your question over there, and then you will have to click on the send button, and we will see the questions, and we will address them as they come in. But while I allow you a few minutes to type in the questions, I'm going to give a little bit of detail about this upcoming webinar, which is next week on the 30th of April. It is a follow-up to this report, going over the technical report, which is discussing what we've learned about online job ads data. We've spent a few years looking at exploring the data, so we wanted to share what we learned. Jeff Stroll, the Director of Research at Georgetown University Center on Education and the Workforce, and myself will be presenting at that webinar. And this is put together in partnership with Association of Public Data Users. So hope to see you all over there next Wednesday. And let me open up the floor for questions. Okay. Um, if I guess data quality questions, I would maybe encourage and leave it for later on. And if there are too many questions, if time doesn't allow us to get to them, we will try to get it to you, respond to you via email. Okay, so the first question is by uh, Brian Point, and he's asking, what do you think practitioners should know about the representation of real-time postings compared to actual job creation? Tony, is that something you would like to take?
Sure. In a sense, the real-time postings are job creation. That is, it's as close as we get uh, to the real labor market as it's working, as it's churning. So the methodology that Burning Glass has built is really a method that tends to take all the churn and turn it into usable information. That is, to sort out the wheat from the chaff, to eliminate duplications, to understand the durations that jobs are held online. And beyond that, what is most, I think, stunning about this data and the architecture underneath it is it just doesn't tell us the sorts of things that I just talked about. That is, the overall volumes of jobs and what particular occupations are being hired. What is really unmined and unexplored and grossly underutilized in this data is the fact that it will tell you everything the employer asked for. So if an employer, they may have wanted to hire somebody in a computer job, but we know looking at this data that there are 2 to 300 computer certificates and certifications that are listed there. We know that they're valuable because the employer asked for them. That is, they're willing to pay money to get them. So it tells us which particular certificates, certifications, and even beyond that, although I think we haven't explored this much very well, is what are the competencies they're asking for? How often do we see things like problem solving and other more general kinds of competencies required in the labor market? So what we have here is the voice of the employer in some detail, telling us what it is they want to hire, who they're looking for, and what they're willing to pay for. And in the end, we're looking at the process of job creation in a fairly turbulent way. These data sit right in the middle of it, really.
Uh, just to add in, so real-time postings is capturing everything in terms of it is capturing the churn and also the new jobs that are created. So postings do not necessarily allow us to differentiate between how much of it is churn, how much of it is new jobs that are coming in, new job additions to the economy. But overall trend, you know, assuming that churn doesn't fluctuate too much, and yes, when we are coming out of a recession, yes, people are more willing to leave their jobs and they feel free or willing to take and move on to new jobs. So there is an increase in churn, but also the job creation, that is new jobs, is also increases. But something that the job ads data is unable to differentiate, at least at this point, from what we've learned from what by looking at the data, is we cannot differentiate between the two. I hope we addressed that question. And if you need if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to email us. You can see our email address on this slide over here. Our email address is cewgeorgetown@georgetown.edu. So moving on to the next question by Dennis Pauling. who proceed to the unduplication process? Was it US Center or Burning Glass? Tony, do you want to say anything about it, or I can?
The deduplication process is something that is belongs to Burning Glass. It's part of the technology that they built. It is a general that is in all data analysis, dynamic data analysis of labor market now. The ability to deduplicate, that is to eliminate duplicate job asks by employers, become one of the core technologies, but only one of several that have been developed to make this data usable for people.
Yeah, so basically Burning Glass is doing the deduplication process. We look at the data which has removed all the duplicates, and duplicates is a problem in job postings because employers tend to post jobs in multiple job sites. So the deduplication process is carried out by Burning Glass. And so yeah, I will probably, as I mentioned, we will go a little bit more detail in about that and its accuracy in the online job ads data webinar next week. And another question is, any highlights on where the jobs are overall geographically? This question was raised by C.J. Salgado.
We know that is the detail in this data tells us a great deal about where the jobs are geographically. We will produce a report that is essentially done but is still in process of in production that will look at job openings by state level, but Burning Glass is capable of doing this at relatively small geographic areas by metro level and a variety of other cuts. So the distributions are reasonably well known in the jobs data. That is because there are addresses from the employers and the employer institution is available on the job ad as well. So we know with some precision, with some difficulty, but with some precision, not only where the jobs come for, but which employer is asking for help. That can get complicated sometimes. If you have a bank in downtown Boston that is the central bank for a large banking chain, the job ad addresses may be allocated mostly to the central office, whereas the jobs themselves will be in the immediate communities and suburbs, for instance. But in general, we know the difference between jobs around Boston and jobs around New York quite clearly.
That's right. So just to add, the quality, the degree of detail in terms of geography that you can drill down varies. If we can do state level analysis with the data, metro level, but then if you are going to go down to census tract or something like that, then you might want, or zip code level, you might want to be careful with using how you use the data. And another question by T.J. Dubensky is, how did you determine educational attainment in your report?
In the end, what we provided that was most helpful here to Burning Glass is we worked with them. I think it's going on 4 years now before we produced this report, but we've worked with them for some time to glean the educational attainment requirements of the jobs requested. In some cases, in many cases, the educational attainment desired by the employer is not listed because they'll list things that are more specific than that. That is, they want a computer program with computer program, and they'll specify the certifications and qualifications they require. And in many cases, the degree level will be presumed, or in many cases, it may not be relevant to the the data because they're asking for something more specific than that. So one of the things we've done with the data that we hope is helpful to Burning Glass is we've tried to estimate using additional external data the education requirements implicit in some of the ads where it's not explicit.
That's right. So we imputed the education requirement for whenever it is missing, and most of the time it is not mentioned in the job ad because it's implicit, as Tony was mentioning. For example, if they're asking if the job ad is for a lawyer, it doesn't say the applicant is required to have a JD. Instead, it would say should be a member of the bar of particular state, but it is understood a certain level of education by depending on that job title. And also another question by TJ Dubensky is, would you be willing to share a spreadsheet of the clusters you create and how they align to sock codes? Maybe yeah, we are willing to share the spreadsheets of the clusters that we created, but yeah, maybe if as I told you, there is an email address. Please email us so that with detailed what you want, and we will see what we can share, and we are happy to share what we have. And another question is, did you find the BLS educational attainment helpful in this process? Tony, is that something you would like to address?
One of the nice things about job openings data, much the same with wage records and transcript data, for those of you who are familiar with that, is that they are ground level, real economy indicators on what employers are asking for. So we don't find the BLS education distinctions very helpful for a variety of reasons, which could be a whole other webinar. But in general, the BLS doesn't really provide education requirements data by occupation. They provide an education designation, which reflects the essentially the lowest entry-level possibility for getting an education that will get you into a particular occupation, recognizing that almost every occupation, truthfully I would guess it's every, but some much so more than others, but almost every occupation has a distribution of education and the current incumbents in the job. The BLS doesn't really estimate the changing structure of that relationship. It just they simply designate the lowest level at entry. Problem we have with that is, one, it doesn't reflect basic human capital theory, which is to say that the value differences between, let's say, a BA, an AA, and a certificate in a particular occupation, the way you understand the differences in requirements is who gets the most money and who gets hired, and the BLS don't really pay any attention at all to that, nor do they do trend, so that essentially their education distribution has been locked up for over, it changes very little over 10 to 15 year spaces. So truthfully, one of the reasons we do the work we do is that neither BLS nor the education department really link education and occupations very effectively. It seems to be a task that falls on them all, for those of you who are in Washington, between the Labor Department and the Education Department, gets done by no one, which is in the end why we were tasked to do this.
Yeah, so we use the American Community Survey. We discuss in detail the imputation method that we use in the report or the appendix of the reports. If you want any for more details, basically we use a combination of what we see in the postings that has education requirements, and also from what the employment education level of the current incumbents in the labor force, as revealed from the American Community Survey. So we use a combination of this because what we saw in the postings data is if we just use the postings data to impute the missings, it would the postings data is highly skewed towards the BA, and just to give a little bit more balance to it, we thought it is better to use the employment, the education of levels of the employment. And so we discuss what the strategy we use over there in the report. I think that is barely, we addressed all the questions, and I would like to thank you all for taking the time to participate in our webinar. Thank you very much for your interest in our work. I also want to let you know this webinar is going to be available on our website. And if you have any further questions, please feel free to email us at cewgeorgetown@georgetown.edu, and also again reminding you of our upcoming webinar on Wednesday, April 30th. If you need to hear more about the data, what the things that we learned by working on exploring the job ads data for a couple of years, we encourage you to participate in that webinar. Thank you very much, and have a good evening and a great weekend.
Unmuted.